Welcome to the Practical Buddhist. Today's talk is about discovering, almost viscerally, that your true self is your heart and seeking its guidance. Who am I? This is not only a very legitimate question, it is central to the spiritual process of ending your suffering, of finding peace. In the previous video, you learned that your ego mind is not your true self. This is a necessary step and helpful in and of itself, but it is not sufficient to free yourself from your suffering and find peace and happiness. For that, it needs to be replaced by something positive. You must come to know that your true self is your heart, your true Buddha nature. Until you know that your true self is your true Buddha nature, you will not be able to withstand the powerful pull of your ego mind, which will always be a part of you. Because until then, you will not know that you have everything you need inside yourself to be at peace and happy. You will not have faith that regardless of what happens, you will be okay, safe, because you have returned home to your heart. So this step is indeed critical. But for most of us humans, such language, your true self is your true Buddha nature, is a bit too abstract. For years, this question of who I am was a puzzlement to me. I believed the teaching that my true self was my true Buddha nature, but what was that? I had no experience of that, or so I thought. My heart? That really wasn't more helpful. I couldn't wrap my head around the concept. And so while I gave voice to the truths as a mantra, it did nothing to move my spiritual practice forward. Then one day when I was meditating, a photo of me as a smiling toddler came to mind. Happy, open, unwounded, smiling for no reason at all other than just being. I knew at that moment that was my true Buddha nature, and I wept, tears rolling down my cheeks. As often is the case in life, it was happenstance that my mother had sent me some photos together with my baby book a few days earlier. We forget there was a time when we were not engulfed by suffering, when we had not yet felt wounded by life, when the joyfulness in our heart shone and we were a light unto ourselves and others. Those photos brought that awareness back to me with a real force. Even though the wounding process starts shortly after birth for most of us, we are, as toddlers, remarkably resilient. Just think of all the wide-eyed, smiling toddlers you've seen. These are not children who have not had negative experiences in their short life, yet their spirit is still flowing from their heart. They have not lost faith that they will be nurtured and loved. That happens a little later, around age 3, when the ego mind develops, and children begin storing feelings based on their experiences. At that point, the feelings unloved, insecure, and neglected, among many others, enter the psyche. For those of you who think that regardless what you may have been as a toddler, that spirit is irretrievably lost, that pure spirit is not within you now, reflect on this. Have you never had a moment when you experienced a discussion within yourself between what we often refer to as the good me and the bad me about what to do? Where do you think these voices come from? In cartoons, this is depicted as an angel sitting on one shoulder and the devil on the other. From a Buddhist perspective, the angry, distrustful, hurt voice comes from the ego mind. The voice which is full of compassion comes from your heart. That is the voice of your true Buddha nature. This experience, which we all have had, is proof that our true self, our spirit, is not irretrievably lost. It is just usually drowned out, overpowered by the volume and force of our ego mind. So now that you understand that you do still have this inviolate source of purity within you, how do you reconnect with your heart? How do you learn to hear its guidance? There are various ways to go about this. What I will present here is the most straightforward, and that is to meditate on your heart, knowing that it is your true Buddha nature. If you have been able to visualize your true Buddha nature, as I did, that will assist you in your meditation. When I meditated on my heart, I discovered that it is light, love, faith, trust, compassion, humility, gratefulness, joy, contentment, strength, courage, and wisdom. With wisdom being the knowledge that our ego mind is not our true self. And since all emotions, judgments, cravings, and attachments, the cause of our suffering, flow from the ego mind, they are not our true self and have no inherent existence, being just a product of the mind. To follow the guidance of our true Buddha nature, on the other hand, is to see things through its eyes, to experiencing things through our unwounded heart, full of positive energy and joy and equanimity. Experience things directly, with dispassion, without the intervention of thought. This understanding of wisdom is the basic teaching of the Heart Sutra. What is central to this meditation is your faith in the teachings of the Buddha and the truth that your true self is your true Buddha nature. It is that faith that will see you through all the challenge you will face from your everyday life as you walk the path. Your true Buddha nature, your heart, is your guide. To feel the empowering nature of this truth, I encourage you to undertake this visualization exercise. Imagine yourself in a dark room, and imagine finding your true self in that room. For me, it was my smiling toddler. Say to it, "I'm coming home." See it reach its hand out to you. Take that hand and let your true self lead you out of the dark room and into the light. The dark room is a metaphor for the world of your ego mind, and the light is a metaphor for your true nature. After watching this video, I hope that you will sit with what you've learned here. Let it begin to bring a new clarity, a new awareness of who you are, and a way for you to understand why your life has been the way it has been. Not in a psychotherapeutic sense, but in a macro-spiritual sense. Feel the door open to loving yourself unconditionally and having compassion for yourself, knowing that the you that you have not loved and not had compassion for is not your true self. It is the product of your ego mind. It is a collection of labels. Instead, identify with your unwounded heart, your true Buddha nature. I strongly encourage you to find a photo of yourself as a smiling or peaceful toddler to connect with. If one is not available, conjure up such an image from your life in your mind's eye. But it's not enough to hear the guidance of the heart. You must have the strength and courage to follow it, to stand up to your ego mind. Given the force of your ego mind and the grasp it has on you, this is, to put it mildly, challenging. Most of my blog posts are about this challenge and how we can empower ourselves to say no to the ego mind and instead follow the guidance of our heart. This will also be the direct or indirect subject of most future videos. Stay tuned. Some viewers may be shaking their heads because they have heard the teaching of no self. It is true that the question of true self is controversial. Buddhist teaching is rife with the teachings of no self. But as I explain in my post, The Misleading Teaching of No Self, the Buddha never taught that there is no self. He did explain what is quote-unquote not self, namely, whatever causes us suffering, all the emotions and cravings that flow from the ego mind. I would argue that the very phrase, not self, implies that the Buddha believed that there was a true self. That is the point of reference. He also went on to say that, quote, yourself would not cause you suffering, end quote. This question will be covered in greater depth in a future video. By walking the path, you are changing the paradigms of your life. Have faith, and in the words of the civil rights song, keep your eye on the prize, which is the end of your suffering. May you experience peace and happiness.